It's 2025 and this is the year that we're going to work on our chess. And I mean really work on our chess. I myself am used to, playing puzzles, playing games, reading chess books, but actually studying chess, taking the time is something that I have been lacking. And so I want you to come on this journey with me in the series where we're going to really study chess, train, and we're going to use the amazing book, How to Study Chess on Your Own. Let's get into it with this first video. We're going to look at the book in general, what it has to offer, and then work through the chapters. This is a series, so holding me accountable to actually go through the book and work on the examples that they give and apply it to other chess problems that I have and study methods. And we're just going to learn the best way to study chess on your own. Whether you have a coach or not, a lot of your time when you are studying chess, you are alone. So let's get into it. Let's see what this book has to offer and let's get better at chess. Welcome to the Forward Chess channel. I'm Charlize. Stay tuned to this video to learn more. So here we are on the Forward Chess website, and this is our book, How to Study Chess on Your Own. New in chess, Davron Kulyasevic. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Not the easiest surname, but Davron. We do have an interview with him. You can check it out on the Forward Chess blog. But this is it, and you can see the reviews. They are many. They are great. This book has been so well received, and let's take a look at why. So here we are on the web app with the book open. If you take a look at the table of contents, do you study with the right mindset, 15 study methods, there are 9 chapters, and each of them he talks you through things. It's a very, I would say, ready book. That's not a great word to use, but there's a lot to read, but a lot of chess examples as well. So we today are going to look at, do you study with the right mindset? But let's first look at the preface. So here, this is a very good chapter to read. I wouldn't skip it because he talks about his approach and the reason for coming up with this book, and what the purpose was, like encouraging readers to study with a proper structure, helping readers become independent in their studies. He explains the structure of the book, which each chapter is about. We'll go through that now. So first chapter we saw, do you study with the right mindset? So what is the right and wrong chess mindset and how to optimize your learning process? First of all, how to develop good study habits and get rid of useless ones. Chapter 2, which study areas players should focus on in their chess study. By the way, you can mark your selections in for chess. Let's also do good habits and get rid of useless ones. Ooh. Good habits and get rid of useless ones. Chapter 4, which kinds of study resources are appropriate for players of different levels. So the big thing about this book is that it does cater to all kinds of levels. I mean, if you're starting out in chess or if you're a professional, there's something for you. So this is what he looks at in chapter 4. 5, 6, 7, and 8 are helping you to how to study the various aspects of chess. We have opening, middle games, end games. So how to best study these on your own. Of course, one thing, having a coach tell you study this, this and that. But if you don't have a coach, this is a great way to be directed, And he ends off with helping you design your own study plan and training schedule. Now, a lot of this is very deep, like when we study chess, sometimes it can be very surface level. At least for me, that's what I do sometimes, and I tell myself, oh, I studied today, but a big point he makes in this book is it's really the quality of what you're studying. And that's what chapter 1 is about, which we're going to get into. But a lot of good words here, and it's really motivating, honestly, how he goes through this chapter over here and tells you exactly how to work through the book. Anyways, let's get into it. We are going to chapter 1. Do you study with the right chess mindset? Okay, so first of all, the chapters, they all have these like examples in the beginning, and what I did, or what I realized I like to do, is to first read what he's saying and then go on to the examples, because the examples is really to help you study, of course. This is what you're going to be studying in this book. He's giving you some examples, some ideas, and the way he would go about it. But yeah, so what I did, I started with this chapter. We're going to go through it together as well, and then we're going to go back to the example, okay, and we're going to go through the deep analysis that he's talking about. So, do you study with the right mindset? And you know, this chapter is very, I would say, honest. He is telling it like it is, making you really aware of your study habits, and you know, whether they're right or wrong, whatever you're doing at home. But he's very straightforward with telling you that this is not a great approach, but this is a better one, essentially, is what he's saying. So, mastering a complex game like chess requires time and intelligent study, of course. So, in this, he is telling us that, first of all, with any great, you know, any sport that you do, any craft that you want to improve at, you need to give it time. But the intelligent study part is important here, because it matters what you study. If you're playing blitz and bullet games all day and you're thinking that this is working on your chess, I have news for you, it is not. So we're going to skip a few of these things, and I'll just kind of summarize what he's saying here. There's no substitute for study time. Of course, what you put into it, you have to put in the work. And an example they use here is Tal, who's obviously, you know, this attacking genius, finding these amazing things over the board, but he had notes and notes of games analysis, and you know, all these top players, any good player really puts in a lot of work behind the scenes. They also use the example of Abhimanyu Mishra here, who of course is talent, and there's a big conversation of talent versus hard work, right? Which beats what? But of course, hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. So you gotta have both, and there is no substitute for the hard work part. You know, as I'm saying this, I'm kind of trying to motivate myself in a way. And that's what the book does. It's extremely, extremely motivating. So we're going to skip over. He gives us a few examples of people who really worked at their chess and would go from, you know, club level player to IMs, GMs, and yeah. Study mindset. I consider, here we have a quote from Alakine, I consider the following 3 factors necessary for success. First, the consciousness of one's own strengths and weaknesses. Second, an exact understanding of the opponent's strengths and weaknesses. And third, a higher goal than a one-moment satisfaction. And here he is basically listing out the approaches of, according to this, you know, what would make, what's the opposite of this? You know, why are we not successful? Why is our chess work not producing results? And for big ones, lack of objectivity. So in this case, he's saying that, you know, when we're playing chess, when we're studying, we're saying, I'm gonna play this, or I think this. But chess is an objective game, so you'll notice stronger players are saying, you know, this is better for black, or white should play this, and even if they're, no matter which color they are. So big point here. Shallow study approach, as I mentioned, you know, you say you're working on your chess, but you're not really putting the time and effort in. doing a few puzzles, playing some blitz and bullet games. Yeah. And that goes in with the fourth point as well, just playing too much and not analyzing, just playing all the time. Third point, short run outlook. This is something I particularly am also guilty of, but this is when you're learning openings, like quick opening traps that you want to surprise your opponents with, when you are studying opening lines just against a specific opponent instead of working on your general repertoire, when you're not, putting in the time to study games, like what you're studying. And in chess, there should be a long-term plan. This is all for your general knowledge, for your general improvement, not just for the next game that you're going to play. And this is basically what the short run outlook is talking about. And now he goes into all of this pretty deeply. A big point on the lack of objectivity, by the way, and a point I like, is that in today's day and age, he says we play tournaments, we play games because we want to win. That's all the results is based on, right? Just winning the game. But strong players, and particularly masters back in the day, it's not just about winning, it's about winning in a good way, playing a beautiful game of chess, and having that love for chess that you're not just playing to win, but you want to do it in the best way possible. I thought that was very nice. So we are going to take a look. We kind of went through all these 4 points that he's talking about. Let's take a look at an example of a game that he is showing us here. So let's get into it. I want to look at the first example. We're not going to go through all of them. I highly suggest you get the book. But we're going to go through the first example that falls under lack of objectivity, and go through the game that he shows. But a big point here is that he recommends that you practice and analyze interesting games on your own without any particular time limit or goals in mind. So you're just appreciating chess beauty, and of course there's so many tournaments, so many great games to be able to do that with. And for him, he suggests even memorizing the move. This is the game, which is, I don't think it's easy. It's going to take practice. It'll take us a lot of practice, but we're going to try it with this game. We're going to go to the game that he shows, the game that he picked out that piqued his interest back in the day. This is a game by Tutmakov and Kozul from 2000, so quite a while ago. But for the author Davern, he says that he remembers studying this game for 4 hours, analyzing this game. So he doesn't remember much. He reanalyzed it for this book and recalled some of his analysis from there. But let's take a look. So we're going to go through the game, and as we remember from the beginning, he's got like critical positions over here. It's going to lead to this position, this first one. So you can take it from this if you want, but I want to go through the entire game to just understand his analysis and what he's saying, and really try to go through the game. I've gone through it once before, so this will be the second time. We'll see how the memory sticks. So we're going to play through the first moves. King's Indian defense. I personally don't love this opening for black. I think it's way easier to play for white, but there are experts in it and people get really good results, so of course it's about how well you know your stuff. Anyways, e5, castle, c6, rook e1. A lot of this we're just kind of going through the motions of the theory at first, but I know in this opening, and although I don't play it myself, this is just from looking at this game and really seeing this being played. I know black's idea is to push f5. Looks super passive for black in general, but f5 eventually comes and then you get this whole kingside attack, and it can get quite crazy. So let's continue. Bishop g4, d5, c5. Now we're going to look at what the author says about this and how he investigated this game and analyzed this game. So maybe we can apply this to our own, you know, take, I don't know, follow a tournament that's going on right now, that's gone on recently, and try to kind of apply the same analysis. h3, bishop d5, bishop g5. He says that this was an unusual move for him, and just considers, what if black just plays a move like h6 and kicks the bishop away, which is good. And what I got from this already is the way he's questioning, you know, he's not just going through the moves and saying, okay, the players know what they're doing, but it's like, why? And probably in analysis and looking at top games, going through top games, I think having this curiosity is super important. So in the game, king h8 was played, but he goes through h6 and sees what happened, and somehow, like, what are the chances is that they had played this game a year before with h6. So h6, you wouldn't have known that, of course, if you didn't do some research. There are so many resources, just look at games that are being played. But so h6 was played in their previous encounter, and it didn't go too well. But he gives the example, well, he shows the analysis of what happened, but white basically just got an extremely good game from this position. And we're not going to go through everything, but it is quite nice, quite instructive, and of course this is a good example to look at because it is relevant to the game we are looking at right now. And you know, in a position like this, seeing king h8 but questioning h6, it makes a lot of sense to kind of go deeper, try to understand why these moves are played or why they aren't played. So let's continue. King h8, a3, queen c7. He said that it is a somewhat odd looking move, but consistent with black's plan to prepare f5 while ignoring this bishop on g5. We can even g5, and let's get out f5, which we know are black's plans. By the way, even if you don't play the openings that are coming up or in these games that you're watching, and a point he makes in the book as well, it's like, still be curious about it, you know. Maybe it's not part of your repertoire, but it will contribute to your general chess knowledge, and you can learn about things like pawn structures in the meantime. So let's continue. Knight b5, queen b8, queen d2. And he says here that this looks natural, but with today's understandings of the pawn structures, g3 would have been preferred. And he gives a little bit of analysis of what could have happened. Bishop d2. The bishop is done on g5. The knight wants to join g5 because of course we're expecting this f5 break. Yeah, and he goes through this f5, takes, and just goes through the potential of what could have happened. And I think this is the best thing about chess and chess games, is that there's so much that doesn't happen on the board, right? Especially players when they're thinking and they're analyzing during the game. So there's so many ways a game can go, how differently the outcome could have been. And this is just something that you can, in your analysis, in your inquisitiveness of games, is to look at and to play. Yes, these moves weren't played, but this is how the game could have gone, and this could contribute to, you know, if you get a similar game in future. So let's return to the game with what was played. Queen d2, knight g8, knight h2. He still prefers his idea of g3, f5, takes, f4, bishop takes b5. And now he says that he wondered why Kozol played this committal move for, enabling white to open the center. And of course, in a capture like this, it is, I'm giving my bishop for a knight. Yes, this is a good knight. But investigate the alternatives. And this is exactly what the author did. Investigating the more straightforward alternative, playing e4 instead. Knight c3, knight c7. Again, analysis. You can come take a look over here. We're not going to go through everything. Bishop e2, b5, and this is an alternative that could have been a little bit more comfortable for black, according to our author. But let's go back. Black plays bishop takes b5, c takes b5, knight c7, f takes. Oh, and by the way, even if it's not just according to engine, and a big point is when you're analyzing games, don't just put on the engine. First, use your own mind and your own kind of research into the investigation into the position to figure out what you think would work. And you can check it with the engine afterwards, of course. D takes e5. Now we come to the position that has that we saw in the beginning of the chapter. We were questioned to find a plan for white and find both sides' plans. Now, if we really spend time on this position, which is what our author did, recognizing this is an imbalanced, dynamic game, what are the ideas here? And he realized that the idea for black is to transfer this knight to d6 via e8. This is what the position is about, this d6 square. And this is a deep idea. There's a lot going on. Both sides are playing according to this, and this is what happened. White responded by playing rook a d1, preventing the plan because of course the pawn can just be pushed. And let's say if d6 was pushed immediately, knight e6. If bishop c4, we see the plan of knight e8. Once the knight comes to d6, black is quite comfortable. So rook a d1, e4, bishop c4. Now a6, which is what was played in the game. An interesting move, but looking at analyzing this position, actually found that the critical continuation was to go for knight e8 immediately. So after d6, bishop d4 comes up, but it's very easily blocked. This bishop looks super nice, but bishop e3 just stops the whole show, and we've got a lot of trades where white has a better endgame just because of more active pieces, particularly in the center. So if ever bishop d4, bishop e3 just stops it. So a6. The best way that white could have responded here was with d6. Allowing this capture, but suddenly this queen becomes very strong, and bishop d4 is no longer possible. You'll just take, of course. So this becomes super dangerous, and suddenly white is much better. But a4 was played by white in the game instead of pushing this idea with d6. So takes, knight e8, black continues with the plan, and bishop f4. Now, author says that white goes for a more complicated continuation instead of, once again, just the more simple pushing this pawn. And we know the ideas from the previous positions from the analysis, so this is something that would come up quite naturally. And we've got lots of trades where this is very similar to the position we had earlier, except now the a pawns are not on the board. So this helps black just a little bit. and is the reason for a6. But white decides bishop f4 is the move, knight d6. Black has achieved the goal, this whole maneuver of knight e8, knight d6. So now we are going into what author calls the maneuvering phase of the game. Queen f2, queen c7, knight f1, maneuvering our pieces just to better squares. Queen b6. Now there's always this idea, of course, of capturing on c4 and then capturing on b5 now that the queen has also moved out of the pin. Knight e3. White decides to leave this, actually. Knight e7, an interesting moment. So black decides to maneuver instead of capturing, which is what we just spoke about. What happens after knight takes c7? And this is what you would ask in a position like this. Like, okay, what is going to happen? Why wasn't this played? So if we have knight takes c4, queen takes b5, knight suddenly jumps into d6, queen b4. Of course, if queen takes b2, queen takes c5, white's just dominating. But it's also pretty equal position. We have play. There are chances for both sides here. Queen e6, if queen b4, rook f1, and same story. Both sides have play, active pieces, and a complicated game ensues. So instead, black opted for knight e7 after bishop f1, knight ec8, choosing the most solid option. But what our author says is that when analyzing this game, you also have to consider, why not knight g6? And okay, if we think about it, of course, in your game, you do this in critical moments. I wouldn't say you do this every single move. Probably most moves, or just the important moments. And this seems like a pretty important moment. And maybe you train your brain to be more intuitive in these questions, and knowing the right moments to really investigate. And this is the moment, because instead of retreating, which seems super passive in a way, solid but super passive, why not go more on the offense with knight g6? And what our author concluded is that after some trades, black has given up the blockade on d6 but has dark squared control, where both sides have chances, but most likely our player black just did not want to give up this d6 control and hung on to that. King h1, moving this king out of the danger. Rook a4. Up to this point, both players have been keeping the tension well, making interesting maneuvers, but this is not a great one, our author says. And instead, the queen should have been improved with queen d8, so that if knight c4 takes, then positional sacrifice, knight d6, allowing the queen to capture, but having black exert more control over the dark squares, having compensation for this pawn. Let's go back. Rook a4, b3, let's kick that rook away, rook d4. This looks like a super strong rook that is sitting on d4, but it had to stay on the a file because this becomes white's turf and becomes an important part of the game, actually. Queen g3, white introduces the unpleasant idea of bringing this bishop to e5 and taking away the strong control of black's dark squares, which just really was a big point for black to have in the game, right? Queen d8. If you just capture the pawn, bishop b5 is coming. So let's go queen d8. And now this is a really nice moment in the game, I thought. Our author likes it too. It's this idea of rook c1. Now, of course, you're attacking a pawn, but important to note that white brings the rook to c1 and then afterwards brings the rook to a1. Why not rook a1 first? Well, the idea is that you want to provoke b6. This weakens the squares on the squares around the pawn a little bit more, and provoking b6 is the idea of rook c1. A very interesting idea, I think. This is quite nice. And maybe this is not something that could come natural as a player, but seeing this in a top game helps. And the point is, this pawn is weaker now on b6 than it was on b7 and can be easily attacked, really. Queen d7, rook a8, suddenly the game becomes very much in white's favor, who has complete control over the a file. Black's pieces are a little bit strangely placed, and the game continued. Knight f7. There was really no great alternative, but let's see what happens if black captures his pawn. If black captures the pawn, capture, knight takes f5, and you can see the real dominance of this rook on a8. So this was not just a free pawn. Let's say queen f7 instead, more defensive role. Suddenly white's pieces are just jumping in everywhere. The weaknesses are just very difficult for black to hold. Knight f7, knight c4, rook g8. If rook takes d5, again, is this not just a free pawn? Well, no siree. Rook takes c8, rook takes c8, knight takes b6 is always a problem. So rook g8 instead, rook b8. Now black instead decides to capture on d5 with the queen, and we have the same idea of earlier, which was capturing on c8 and then capturing on b6. The rest is a matter of simple technique. Let's see how white finishes this off. Queen d8, knight takes c8, queen takes c8, bishop c4, queen d7. I have the bishop here, I have passed pawns. This is just a wonderful position for white. Now the other rook comes to a1. So this a file is just held hostage the second half of the game by the white rooks. And here it's very difficult for anything to happen over here for black to make any sort of comeback. There is no real plan. White's got the dominant rook, the pawn, the queen's coming in now, and game over. So this was a great game, and there are many great games in the world being played every single day. One thing our author suggests is that when you see a top tournament following top games, there's commentary, the boards there, engine, chat. So sometimes just turn the commentary off, turn the analysis off, take the game, think of your own as if you were playing. Maybe it's just to look at the opening, maybe interesting end game, complicated middle game, but it is worth it to kind of study live in time. And my opinion is that when the commentary is going on as well, you can check what they said about the position after you did your own investigation into it. And he says you're gonna get better and better at this. This is just a habit. Next thing you know, you've been studying a position for 2 hours. That's a game that's being played live. So our lesson for today is studying, or really analyzing, investigating good chess games, top chess games. And let's get into the habit of that and investigate, be inquisitive the way our author showed us he was in this particular game. So that is it for our chapter. Of course, he goes through the other points he made: shallow studying approach, playing too much, doing these things, and he gives us a few examples again of games, gives us analysis, and all of it is really related to what he is saying. So highly recommend. I mean, this is such a popular book already, and I'm going to work through the rest of this chapter. I hope that maybe in a few days I'll put in a comment section what I've learned. If you have, let us know what you've learned, what your best takeaway was from this specific chapter, and we will be back for the next chapter in our next video. See you then.